Hey everybody, Nick here, and it's time for another segment of Ask the Nick. Of course, I've still got more questions than I could possibly answer right now. But if you have additional questions for the Nick, just leave them down in the comments of this video, or frankly any other. I try my best to read all comments, but at this point they're getting to be enough of them that occasionally they're slipping through the cracks. So if I don't answer your question after a long time, or respond to it, post it again. Maybe I'll catch it the second time. Alright, let's go on ahead and jump into some questions. So Electric Tactical asks, Nick, what are you going to do when you hit 500,000 views? Actually, that already happened in the time since he asked the question and this video is getting filmed. And I'm actually about to hit 4,000 people subscribed as well, which still blows me away. I mean, I'm really grateful for the amount of, basically, feedback and the amount of enthusiasm this channel's gotten, and I'm really thrilled about it. These milestones keep on ticking by, and I keep on being amazed, and so I'm just going to keep on making decent content for you all. So, there you go. That's my celebration. So, John Fraser asks, Mr. Shabazz, what's your take on Brous Blades and Quartermaster? Gems are too much ugly. So, Quartermaster has interesting designs. I'll give them that. They're unique. By and large, no one's making knives that look like Quartermasters, for better and for worse. But the thing is, ever since they've been on the scene, people have accused them of importing their knives, of making knives in China and then claiming that they're made in the US of A. Don't get me wrong, I don't mind knives made in China, but you can't lie about it, right? So anyways, there have been, good evidence of that in the past, but recently Quartermaster actually posted a picture, behind the scenes of their knives being made in a pretty distinctive CNC mill, and somebody noticed that that exact same mill was in use on the We Knives page, which is a Chinese brand. Quartermaster at that point removed the picture and banned anybody on their Instagram page who ever mentioned it again, and basically admitting that, yeah, that's what's going on. So they're faking made in the US of A, and that's really ugly. So no matter what the quality of the knives is, I'm not going to support them in that. Brous Blades, on the other hand, I really don't have a strong opinion on. Personally, his design language doesn't speak to me particularly, so I've not run out of my way to get one. I'd be happy to review one that a viewer sent, though. And maybe he'll do something in the future that really rubs me the right way. I've heard some good and some bad, but a lot of that was older, and so I don't want to judge Brous Blades. I just don't have enough information. So, who knows there? Wish I had better opinion there. Electric Tactical asks, when it comes to knife colors, which colors do you like? For example, does a knife with pink handles put you off? Pink handles, they need to sell it effectively, but I'm not completely out of line with it. Colors are fine. There's way too many just gray stonewashed titanium knives out there in the world, and don't get me wrong, I love me some gray stonewashed titanium knives. But it's refreshing when I get a burst of color on my table. Like this is a Todd Begg Steelcraft Bodega. It's going to be a review of this guy coming up soon. Very nice knife here. Very, very nice. And this is a Grimsmo Norseman. And so a little bit of color done well can be great. The only color that really puts me off, and I'm sorry, Z Hunter, you know I love you, but come on, is this lime green thing from the zombies. Just every time you see it, it's just Mall Ninja on crap. And so I'm not a big fan of, like, when Benchmade announced the 942 with zombie green backspaces. That doesn't do it for me. But I'm willing to look at anything color-wise, but for my own collection, I'm a fan of grays and the blues. So, Lacostita Hater asks, Nick, would you start a Patreon? And this is not the first person to ask that. I get asked that on a pretty regular basis. And Patreon, for those of you not in the know, is a website where you can basically sign up to be a patron of an artist of some variety, whether it's an artist, a musician, or whatever. And so you can either give, $5 or $10 a month or whatever you'd like, or, per video, I'll donate, $2 every time you make a video. Things like that. And, I can set up rewards for backers. If you back at the Shining Freaking Gem level, I will autograph a Z Hunter and send it to you. I don't think you want that to be the case. So, some people do backer patron-only videos, but I don't like that. If I'm doing this, I want my information to be free, but I'm sure I could figure out something. But the thing is, anyways, I've thought about it, but I haven't gone there because I feel like I'm already getting a lot of support from the community, and I don't know. I don't want to. I don't want to be pushy here. I get viewers who are watching every day. I get subscribers. I get people who are sharing my stuff on random forums, and that brings me so much joy to see. Oh wow, holy crap! This person found it interesting enough to share with that random person. That's awesome. Things like that. I get the people who point out good gear to me. Send me an Instagram DM or tag me in some picture, and it's like, oh God, yes, I do want that. You bastard. And, so I'm finding great stuff that way. I got people who are loaning me gear, some on a regular basis. I got some gems who are repeatedly sending me stuff. They get something brand new. Okay, Nick, I just picked up a blah, blah, blah. I'm going to send it your way. Like, oh, you, gem, you know who you are. But anyways, so I feel like I'm getting a lot of love from the community already, and I just don't want to push it. But I tell you what, democracy and whatnot, if you'd actually be interested in signing up for a Patreon and donating, do me a favor and leave a comment down here saying so, or shoot me an email or a DM on the Instagram, whatever. And if I actually get enough interest to make it worthwhile, maybe I'll go ahead and set something up like that. And feel free to let me know how you'd like to see it work. I haven't run a Patreon before, obviously. And so if anybody's interested, I'll do it. But otherwise, everything's going to be what it is already. And you guys are going to continue being absolute shining gems of viewers. So Kevin Wickwire asks, if autos were legal, Nick, would you carry one? Good question. Part of it is not just the legality, but the social acceptability of it. Even in places where it's legal, there's still the, oh my God, switchblade fear that people have got going on. So, but even pretending that suddenly they were legal and everybody was just fine with an automatic knife, I probably wouldn't. Because, okay, this is a flipper knife. It's completely manual, but it pops open exactly when I need it, and it shuts one-handed with absolutely no trouble. And so I don't really see what I'm getting out of a knife where that's spring-loaded. It just seems like it's adding a lot more complexity to the mechanism that's not really, strictly speaking, necessary. So, yeah, automatics just, I don't know, they don't make all that much sense to me. There's a certain cool factor to the stick, automatic out the front knives, but again, it just doesn't appeal. They're not my scene, but I got no problem with those who do love them. Good question, Kevin. So Toad Sticker asks, what's your thoughts on traditional knives? Same thing, Isaac Herring, why don't you like slip joints? Well, it's not that I dislike slip joints. I think there's some great stuff out there. But the thing is, they've got a lot of features usually that are non-starters for me. For instance, I hate nail nick opening knives. It bugs the crap out of me. I don't keep a long fingernail, and it bothers me immensely to get my thumb in there and try and pull my fingernail away from the finger. I don't know, maybe I'm just weird, maybe I'm a wimp, but I hate that feeling with a passion. The only nick I like is this one right here. And I'll be honest, I'm kind of on the fence even there. So nail nicks are a non-starter. For a traditional to be even okay for me, you have to be able to pinch it open. And so usually that's an easy open groove. I got this guy because the seller said you could do that. I don't know what kind of hands he had, but yeah. Anyways, similarly, I'm not a huge fan of carbon steel. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but especially in a pinned construction knife that I can't disassemble to maintain, which is another kind of demerit. I do much prefer modern stainless steels, because, well, they stain less, and they can get better edge retention, things like that. And so, it's the case that a lot of the modern traditional knives just aren't that appealing to me because they lack those features. But if you can think of traditional knives that have an easy open kind of thing, a pinch like this, and use modern steels, and ideally, have like a lockback or something like that, I'd be very interested in checking out more of it. But by and large, the features just aren't there. And so I'm stuck admiring the aesthetics, even though I'm not that interested in the knives themselves from my EDC. But great question, guys. So Jess Hull asks, one question I have is, how do you find knives you like the GMT Razor? Where do you purchase these more elusive knives? Well, watch my Nick's Guide to Buying Used Knives. I'll link it down below there. But practically speaking, all four of these knives are fairly elusive. These two Shirogorovs, the Hati and the Neon, are fairly uncommon. You see them new anywhere. The GMT Razor is now out of production, and the Greensmore Norseman, they only release one or two of them every couple of weeks, and it's usually bought up very quickly by, honestly, usually a scalper. But still, so all of these are hard to find, but you can with some persistence. And what you really got to do is look at the forums, your Blade Forum, your USN, your Knife Swap, even your Instagram Knives for Sale tag. but be very careful about your seller there. There are a lot of sketchy folks doing that. And also even consider Facebook groups. There are places where people trade knives. Graham Knives has a pretty active Facebook group where these pop up relatively often, not at crazy prices. And speaking of the price, one of the biggest steps is to make sure you know what you're willing to pay. Know what a reasonable price on the secondary market is for, say, a Graham Razel or a Greemsmo Norseman. And limit yourself. That way when some random jackass buys one off the Greemsmo website and then the next day has it for sale for like $1,600, which is completely out of line and insane, and he should feel bad, you can just laugh it off, basically, and wait for the price to go down. But, yeah, so honestly, that's what you gotta do. You just gotta watch the forums and watch the forums and watch the forums and search once a day for 2-3 weeks. And eventually you'll see one and you can grab it because you've got the funds set aside and you know how much you're willing to pay. And then you'll end up with your Neon or your Norseman or whatever you'd like that. It's also worth looking at eBay, although there are a lot of scams there, and also places like Arizona Custom Knives, a Steel Addiction, things like that, will sometimes have knives that are now out of production or are custom, but, you know, you pay a bit of a price there, usually a considerable one, but it's sometimes the best way to get the knife without dealing with some random sketchy bastard on the Instagram. So I hope that's helpful, Jess, but unfortunately, it's often just a crapshoot. So Arthur Leyenberger asks, are there any knives that you think are going to appreciate in value if you buy them at retail today? I see some knives on the secondary market, he says, and I see them with these crazy prices, like the Norseman and the Neon. And he said, I'm wondering if I can make a little extra cash to support my knife habit. The safe answer is no. You should never treat EDC gear, whether that's knives or watches or otherwise, as an investment. At the very least, you're going to lose a little less money, but that's about all you can hope for 3 reasons. First, remember there's a big gap between retail and secondary prices. You buy a Sleesh Bowie right now for $300, and then without opening the box, you turn around and put it on the Blade forums, and you're going to get $250 out of it. You lose $50 just taking this guy off of the lot, much like with a used car. And that sucks. And so in order to make any money, it needs to appreciate at least like $50, and then whatever money you're going to make. You can't count on that. Also remember that bubbles are a real thing. Right now there's a huge bubble on Shirogorov knives because everybody wants one and they're hard to find. But as soon as enough people have them, suddenly all the people who are trying to sell a Shirogorov for $800 are going to realize, wait a second, these are back down to retail prices. And it's going to hurt. This happened with Hinderer knives very recently, probably about a year and a half ago. There was a huge bubble. Everyone's buying $800 Hinderer knives, and then the bubble popped, and you couldn't get rid of them at $350. That's rough. And then finally, you got to avoid the greater fool theory. It's very easy to make a purchase or an investment or something like that you know is foolish, but with the hope that out there someplace there's a bigger idiot than you who's willing to pay even more. If you buy a Greemsmo Norseman at, $1,000, which is a lot of money for a non-Damascus Norseman, and frankly is a little bit foolish, and you think that there's some fool out there who's willing to pay $1,200, you better hope that fool is out there. Because if they're not, guess what? You just took a nice, long, deep, luxurious bath. And that's gonna be rough on you. All of this said, there are a couple of things that do tend to go up. If a knife is discontinued that's been pretty popular, it's not a terrible idea to keep a couple around or keep one around, because in a few years people are going to be looking for it. Like if the Sleesh Bowie ever goes away, is discontinued by Spyderco, maybe in a couple of years somebody would pay better money than what you paid for a new in-box Sleesh Bowie. That's a risky investment for sure, and it requires you to keep a bunch of knives sitting around the place, but it's something to keep in mind. You can often make a little bit of money if you win a custom knife in a lottery, like on the Instagram, but the thing to remember is that if you enter a lottery with the intent to sell it right afterwards, you're a scalper, and that's really sleazy and kind of crappy. And it's part of the reason the knife community can't have nice things. So you got to keep that in mind. And also special editions are another case where sometimes it goes up in money. If there's only 200 of them and a lot of people want them, those 200 are going to be fancier. But most of the time, if you pay retail, the question is not how much money you'll make, it's how much money you're going to lose. And generally, that's a fair amount of money. If you're trying to make cash in this game, you better be paying wholesale, or you better be psychic and know where the market is going. Because if you're buying knives right now and pretending it's an investment, all you're doing is gambling with fancy pants on. So, there you go. Sorry, Arthur. I'm afraid that the key to grand riches is not right here on this table. So Adam Smith asks, what's the next keeper to seller ratio? My collection versus total ownership. So I've got about 10, 12 knives in my permanent collection. And those are knives that I really love. And every time I buy something new for the permanent collection, it does have to replace something in there. And so it has to be better. And if it's not better, it ends up getting sold. And so that's kind of my approach. The goal here is kind of survival of the most carried, of the most loved. If a knife doesn't bring me that much joy, it'll get replaced by something else that maybe does. And of course, my eventual goal is to find the one knife, the one watch, the one pen that makes me happy, and it goes away, and suddenly my life devolves into, well, nirvana. Okay. But the thing is, I know that's not happening. But that's kind of how I work things. It's just constant in and out, and I'm trying to keep it small so my collection gets better rather than bigger. Good question. Adam also asks, are knives a business sideline for you? Are you making a profit here on all this? And the answer is a definitive no. I'm not even breaking even. Even on my personal collection, all it takes is one bath and suddenly you're way in the red. So I've given myself permission to take a bath, and similarly on the channel. I get a lot of joy from doing it, so it's okay that I'm not breaking even on it. That's just life. That's a simple fact. You know, it's a hobby, like anything else. I make my money elsewhere. If this were a business, I probably wouldn't enjoy doing it that much. But since it's not, I'm just, you know, some guys spend money on greens fees or any other number of things. I spend money on shipping gear, loaners back and forth, and buying the occasional thing for my permanent collection. And it brings me some joy, and yeah, would I love to break even? Sure. Would I love to make a profit? Oh, yeah. But I'm okay with the fact that I don't. That's just the nature of life. And I don't want to push things, you know, I don't want to try and pretend that this can be a business so that I can, because let's just face it, that ain't going to happen for me. Not that astute of a businessman. Great question, though. So Hans Wurst asks, Nick, what's your opinion on Tritium watches? Have you ever considered getting one? Yeah. Oh, definitely. For those of you not in the know, Tritium is H3. It's 3 hydrogen atoms tacked together, and it's very mildly radioactive, which means that if you put it in a little tube with some phosphor, it will glow always, constantly, and keep glowing and glowing and glowing. You don't need to charge it with light or anything. It just glows all the damn time. So if you're a mole person and you're on the ground for 3 months, your watch will still glow just fine without ever having seen natural light. I mean, it's usually brighter than normal chemical lume on watches, which is just a glow-in-the-dark sort of substance. They're really cool, and there are watches that instead of having hour markers have little vials of tritium, so it's visible during the day and it glows at night. And that's awesome, and sure, I'd love to try one of those one of these days. But the thing is, modern watches have very good lume, a phosphorescent chemical that basically you expose it to light and it glows. Here, I'll use this flashlight here and activate the lume on these 2 watches. This is a Casio Oceanus here and my SIN 104. These are my 2 analog watches in my permanent collection. And both of these have great lume. If I get up in the middle of the night and look down at my wrist at 4 a.m., it still glows just fine. It glows beautifully. And so, you know, do I feel like I need the tritium? No. And so that's where it comes. I mean, if you have a watch like this guy, the Casio Duro, that has really crappy lume, then tritium's really appealing. Like, it's always good. But the thing is, the Super Luminovas, or the Rolex lume compound, the Seiko's lume stuff, or Casio's even, is very, very good. And so, practically speaking, it does what I need. But, you know, that said, it's still really cool to have tritium on the wrist. So someday I'll probably check that out. Great question there, Hans. So Alex Bikeman O'Neill asks, Nick, if you have some spare time, would you please consider running for U.S. President? That's very kind of you, Alex, and I would love to accept such a nomination. But the thing is, I would face incredible opposition from both the Mall Ninja lobby and the Tactical Operator lobby. And with that kind of an opposition, I just don't think I've got the funds necessary to run here, especially if I keep buying EDC gear like I am here. So, as much as I would love to, I hate to say it, I'm just not a viable candidate here. I guess I'll just have to stick to making YouTube videos about EDC gear. Thank you very much, everybody. Again, if you have more questions, just post them down in the comments here below. It's always a joy to talk to you all, and have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day.